Hey everybody, welcome back to Game Esoterica and our continuing series, Ridge Revolution. It's a hard word to say, but it's an arcade racing retrospective on the Ridge Racer franchise. And today we're playing Ridge Racer Revolution on the PlayStation 1 via Duckstation. Now this is the direct sequel to the original Ridge Racer on PlayStation 1, but it is not any sort of sequel to Ridge Racer 2 on the Namco System 22. The naming conventions of this series make absolutely no sense. This is a PlayStation 1 sequel to the original arcade game and PlayStation 1 game. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But in my Ridge Racer episode for PlayStation 1, I talked about the fact that while that game was historic and quite fun, it basically was over within 20 minutes. The amount of content on that disc was anemic, and what Namco tried to do here is create a new version of Ridge Racer with new tracks to give you a little bit more to do with more modes. And while they definitely succeeded by giving you more than the original version, I would say this game still is a little bit paper thin as far as how much you can do in it, and it's only till they get to R4 where this franchise really becomes a little bit more meaty. But what is here is incredible. It's so much fun to see new courses for Ridge Racer, because obviously in the arcade, Ridge Racer and Ridge Racer 2 were basically two sides of the same coin, and it wasn't until Rave Racer that we actually got new courses out of the development team. So when the original Ridge Racer came to PlayStation 1, while it was outstanding from a technical perspective and seeing that running at home, if you'd played a lot in the arcades, it wasn't anything new. Ridge Racer Revolution really does feel like the first wholly original PlayStation 1 game out of the team at Namco, and while I do bounce into walls here and there every once in a while, it is still a ton of fun, and I'm sure my performance will improve in just a moment. But again, in Duckstation, this looks spectacular, and if you've never played Revolution, you definitely should check it out, and I do love enhancing it on Duckstation. Basically modernizes what came before. And I will say again that I do prefer using first-person mode in all of these games. But the interesting thing about this title is that while it has new courses, it still retreads a lot of the same territory in the way that all of the courses are comprised at least in part by the course you previously played. There's beginner, there's intermediate, and advanced, but all of those courses are going to utilize some of the same track to get you to the new section. So really, this may be 3 new courses on paper. It really feels like only like 1.5 total new courses, and that's just a weird thing. It was still early in the PlayStation's lifespan, and they were still basically spending their time on just trying to get these things working, and less time trying to provide you with an insane amount of tracks. And that's the one downside of Revolution. It is fun to have all of these new courses, but when you realize that each course kind of shares 20 to 25% of the same roadway as the previous course, you find again it isn't just as meaty as you had hoped. But in additions, there are different modes to play against your friends, and that is why you have the rear view mirror up top. Obviously it's good against the CPU, but when you're actually racing against an opponent, being able to see that in real time is awesome, and it was some trickery going on to try to even draw another screen. But every time we cross the checkered flag right there to go to a new lap, I am changing the track. We're now on the most advanced track in the game, but it still starts out the same way. Now I get that the resources were expensive back in PlayStation 1 development, people were still getting their head around developing for 3D, but this is one area in which Revolution kind of lets me down. You really don't see that much of a new course between the intermediate and advanced. It is just like a couple different turns different around one bend. So it's another game that if you got this and you're trying to play it for a one-player perspective only, it's going to be something where you're going to see everything the game has to offer within like the first 30 seconds. And this game, more than any other one in the series, in the third-person view, 100% always throws me around and beats me up as far as the turns are concerned. But I've been saying that about every single Ridge Racer game in this entire retrospective. But on the graphical front, even though I am enhancing it, originally this game was a pretty as hell game too, especially in areas like this where all of those fast-moving textures really do sell the illusion of speed. And it's got a great soundtrack as well, so go ahead and listen for like 30 seconds, and I'll come back and tell you about Pocket Racer, which came directly from this game. But enjoy! It's an awesome soundtrack, but let's move over to Pocket Racer right now, which is a Namco System 11 arcade board release and the last game released in the Ridge Racer franchise as far as arcade games are concerned. Now this is based wholly on Pretty Racer, a mode in Revolution that you could unlock and play. It's the exact same track, and this is what it would look like on PlayStation 1 hardware if it was in the arcades. And it's really interesting that basically the developers at Namco took what amounted to an extra mode in Revolution and then ported it back over to an arcade board placed on PlayStation 1 hardware and then released it out into the wild. It's a very strange game to have the last official arcade release, but it is fun from a historical perspective, just what actually came out of Revolution. Because the tracks have been remastered in a lot of different versions of Ridge Racer moving forward, and it's a bummer that we never got any sort of other Pocket Racer modes moving on. I would love to see some of these cars and some of the physics and handling systems from this game move over to the stuff on PlayStation Portable when we get to those videos. But moving back over to Revolution, like I said, it is just a little bit of a bummer that there's not more meat here. If you look at that track graphic there in green that just showed, and you see these different courses, you will see that they are so similar. You're basically just racing time and time again on the exact same spots. And that to me is just a little bit of a letdown. You get time trial mode, you get 4 vehicles unlocked by default when you start. There just isn't that much meat here, and this feels like maybe if they just included a couple more tracks we would be having a lot of fun. But the impressive thing is just how much better the graphics looked so close together. Ridge Racer hadn't been out for that long before Revolution came, and now we have the two games side by side, Revolution on the left and Ridge Racer on the right. Obviously these aren't the same courses, they don't exist in the same game, but you can see just how much better the texture work is and how much better the game looks with that short of a period of time in between both of them. And that was the fun part about PlayStation 1 and 3D in the mid-90s. When you bought a new game 6 to 8 months later, you were blown away all over again with just how much better 3D had gotten in that period of time. And that's always fun to kind of talk about the evolution, not just of the games themselves, but how they look. Revolution still has that vibrancy and Ridge Racer charm that you got in arcades, and we would basically lose that entirely once we get to Rage Racer, which, while a fun game, takes all of that colorful charm out of the series and goes way more maudlin with a lot of dark earth tones. But side by side here, these two games being on the same hardware so close together just feel like different generations of actual hardware. It is just fun to be able to compare the two of them, because that was the thing back in the day. Ridge Racer entries kept coming out. You get an arcade game, then you get another arcade game, you get a third arcade game in 18 months. You get a PlayStation 1 game, and then you would get a sequel to it relatively soon afterwards. And that's because the original Ridge Racer was just such a small game on PlayStation 1 to be a launch title. They were able to then create a new game because they understood how the hardware worked, and they could spend more time on making a new game versus trying to figure out how to get the hardware to execute anything in the first place. If I had to put one of these games in the closet, never played again, I think I would put the PlayStation 1 original away, and I would keep Ridge Racer Revolution as the game that I would go back to. And if you do want to play more modern versions of these courses again, they're basically all in the original PlayStation Portable release, so it gives you another modern way to take a look at what's going on with Ridge Racer Revolution. Now I know I've sounded slightly negative about this game in some parts of the video, and all I want to say is that when you got this back in the day, you might find out 4 hours later that you wanted another video game because you kind of felt like you had seen everything, but that's not why we're reviewing these type of titles. We're talking about the evolution of the series, and Revolution is a big evolution. That was a hard sentence to get out, folks. Pat myself on the back there. This was just a bigger, prettier, better looking version of Ridge Racer with brand new tracks, and by the point that this came out, Namco had been utilizing the same 2 tracks for like the last 24 months, so it was great to get any new Ridge Racer, especially one that you could play at home on your PlayStation 1. But I would say that we're getting really close to where the series absolutely lights up, and that is R4. The developers at Namco were taking that arcade DNA and making a new game on PlayStation 1, but they were so close to cracking the code, in my opinion, of what made a good console release when you get to R4. But again, the sensation of speed, the courses, that plane flying by this open tunnel here, it just works. This makes you excited to play it. You want to keep trying to get a better time. You want to be able to get first place. It makes you come back for more. And that's the good thing about a game that doesn't have that much content. So long as the content on offer is spectacular, then you are happy to continue to play it over and over again for the next couple weeks until you've really beaten it like a dead horse. But short of that, we've got more games coming up in this Namco retrospective. If you've never played Revolution before, definitely check it out. It is great. See you next time. Bye-bye.